관계 두세니 손에 다와담제 범미실 담배 준이 된제로 고담다라 차잖아. Venerable monks and nuns, brothers and sisters in Dharma, good afternoon everyone. We are here to interact or discuss something about ethics in education, in economy, in social structure, policy making, and so on. This is really a vast subject. I'm not a student of all these things. But in spite of that, the various organizations the socially engaged Buddhists of Ladakh, Central Institute of Buddhist Studies, Flower in Dharma, jointly asked me to share some of my thoughts, and it is not inappropriate I say no, so therefore I venture to try to interact with you some of my thoughts. The first problem is a medium, the language. I have no adequate knowledge of English through which I could express my view of feelings eloquently and correctly. But this is our funny dichotomy in the land of Ladakh. Due to my shortcoming of not knowing your local dialect, so I have to use some means of communication which are commonly understood by all the listeners. So my broken English shall have to be used. Whenever you are not able to understand or not clear, you are free to interrupt me and ask for repeat. Don't be shy. And as usual in the beginning, I would make it very clear, crystal clear, that I'm not trying to impose my views on you or try to indoctrinate you or brainwash you. Each individual has his or her own inner wisdom, and which is basically by nature a unique nature, unique one. So this unique should be protected as its own independence independent way of thinking, perceiving, and experiencing. That is one of the most basic human rights, to have a freedom of conscience, which become quite a rare commodity in the postmodern civilization or 21st century, so to speak. What I am sharing or submitting you is a viewpoint which is not only mine, a section of people. It may not be a majority in this globalized world, but there are quite a number of people, in spite of its minority in number, but the rationality, reasoning, and logically we hold this kind of viewpoint, which is sharing with you for your examination, analyzation, and if you feel there is some reasoning, then you may consider it, and otherwise you can outrightly reject it. We are moving to an age of dangerous period. The entire planet Earth is threatened to completely disintegrate or become unlivable by any living creature. This is not an exaggeration. The most authentic scientific people are now accepting it, and also they have clearly accepted the science and technology will not have any remedy to these challenges. And also, unless the entire living humanity on this earth alter or change their way of life, the global warming, the climate change, and the environment degradation, the distortion of eco-balance is going to destroy the entire planet. This is a fact, not a fiction. So, in spite of that, many people still unaware of this, unmindful of this, and some are aware of this, but they think it's not so urgent. During one's own life, there may not be such challenge or danger during their own life, and they do not have any consideration or care for the life of the coming generations. In such situation, I'm happy to notice that younger generation of this area, Ladakh, have awareness about it and mindful about it, and they are talking about the challenges of modernity. The other day I told the young people that it is very appreciable you understood, you feel that there is a challenge which is not a natural calamity kind of thing, but a challenge which is created by human beings, knowingly and intentionally. So, the wake-up call, you have noticed and pay attention to that wake-up call and begin to talk about the challenges of modernity. Otherwise, a larger session of people always think that modernity is always an opportunity, not a challenge. This misconception is deceiving the huge majority of the human community. So, I appreciate, I congratulate the young people of Ladakh able to recognize the inevitability of the challenges with which we are not very sure whether we can have a remedy to them or we are just intending to perish ourselves in these new human-created challenges. Having said that, the topic of discussion for today given to me is ethics in education, economy, social life, and policy making. As I mentioned before, in a space of 1 hour's time, obviously we will not be able to touch each of these points. And then the question prepared for me, the first is, what is ethics? The second, why is the need of ethics in education, economy, and so on and so forth? And the third is, how is the domain of the education, business, social life, and policy making interconnected? The right question. And the fourth is, how can an individual contribute in bringing about a change? It's a well considered question, and we need to consider very carefully each one of these questions. The concept of ethics, how to define what is ethics and what is unethics. It has no commonly acceptable principle for all the people in the East or West, or in the traditional and modern. So they are very diverse viewpoints about this. It is not easy to compare or discuss each one of the concepts. The concept, the definition of ethics has been ever-changing with the time, with the conditions, and with the different community or society or locality. But I can categorize them in two groups. The first group is those people who consider ethics as a thing which changes from condition to condition, from society to society, from community to community, from time to time. And there is no static definition of ethics. It shall have to be defined according to time, the community and the need of people, so on and so forth. Particularly a situation in which the things are being examined. And the other view is there is a universal principle of ethic, which is a kind of unchangeable principle. The right, the wrong, the justice and the injustice that can be defined from basic principles. The principles are eternal. It does not depend on depend on people or time or conditions or environment. So we, the Asian people, particularly in the Indian tradition, we are in those groups, although there are different viewpoints, but basically we consider there is a universal eternal principle which defines what is ethic and what is unethical. In our Indian expression language, the ethics are by and large expressed with the term of shield. It is a philosophical or a kind of expression which is mostly used in a spiritual realm. Sadhacharya, good conduct, that can also use for in lieu of the shield. Of course, there are little differences. In spite of that, this can be used a good conduct kind of thing. And also a kind of good behavior. Now the question, the direct question, what is ethic? What kind of physical, mental work or action can be categorized as ethical, and what things can be categorized as unethical? So the universal principle is an action which is directly or indirectly evolves into violence, that is unethical. An action which does not involve directly or indirectly any kind of violence, violence-free or non-violence, that is ethical action. This is been accepted by majority of the Indian tradition. Indian tradition includes the entire Eastern tradition which prevails until now. This is a common understanding. This is further elaborated, experimented and demonstrated by Mahatma Gandhi during his lifetime, and make a kind of evident to everyone. This is a real definition of ethical behavior or unethical behavior can be divided by the principles of violence, non-violence. There are few traditions in India. They do believe that number of circumstances the violence can also be accepted and they are considered to be justifiable and it can become ethical. For instance, for self-defense or in defense of larger community or in defense of dharma and so on and so forth. So that's why a number of traditions they talk about war of dharma, dharmic war. But the Buddhist and the Jains, two major traditions of India, do not believe in this kind of exception. Violence in any form, in any way, in any circumstances is unacceptable and we should be considered as completely unethical, whether it may be in defense of self or in defense of many others, so on and so forth. Of course, there are different interpretations for certain circumstances, and this still do not accept unconditionally an act of violence as ethical. So having said that, people like me, not necessarily follower of Buddha's teaching, many present-day thinkers or philosophers do also believe in this way, including Gandhi. They never accept any kind of violence which could be justified due to circumstance and particular environment or conditions. Gandhi believes that truth, non-violence, and ethical conduct are almost synonymous. He has many times said that the truth and non-violence is two sides of one coin. This is a great way of expressing his views. Now, the second question is how to define the violence. There are individual violences, there are collective violences, and particularly the structural violence. A violence is involved in socio-economic political system by which apparently or unapparently causes harm to any individual or to group of people or to section of people, so on and so forth, which are quite invisible and difficult to recognize, almost untangible structural violences are there. In present world, the structural violence is one of the greatest problems for everyone. So, having said that, in every field, when we talk about ethics, we shall have to examine what is violence and what is non-violence, and how to bring a complete non-violence into, as you mentioned in your question, into the education, into economy, social life, and policy making. Particularly in the 21st century, in the postmodern civilization, non-violence become much more important ever in the past comparing. In the past, violence is limited in its scope, in its sphere, and in its period. But today, the violence, the capacity of violence become so enlarged, and the instrument of violence become so sophisticated. So therefore, at many times, I quote the utterance by the Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King the Junior, was a true follower of Mahatma Gandhi, and he bring about a very notable and tremendous social change in North America. The racial and color discrimination come to an end. Just 3-4 days before he was assassinated, he made a very famous statement. In that statement he said that today we do not have the luxury of choosing between violence and non-violence. The choice left for us is only to non-violence or non-existence. This is a very true statement. In today's world, if we look to the larger or bigger picture, as the expression used by the previous speaker, is that the choice is between either non-violence or complete destruction, no existence. So therefore, define the ethical conduct through violence and non-violence has become much more appropriate than ever before. So now I'll try to come to the education, and I may not be able to touch the other subjects one by one, but one principle which might be applicable to education may also applicable to other issues. How to bring ethics sincerely into the education system. We have to recognize the categories of the ethical way of life, ethical conduct, and then thereafter how to bring them into action, particularly into education system. To bring about non-violence education, now I use this word, non-violence education. So here I need to clarify in the beginning that non-violence education means, not only means to teach how to practice non-violence. Non-violence education, I mean that the method of education must be a non-violent. The educators must be a practitioner of non-violence. The learner, the students must have a non-violence mindset and appreciation to the non-violence. And not only the system of imparting education, but also the system of evaluation, and all through the conduct of education should be violence-free. That is, I should not say impossible, but not easy. The structure of violence is invisible, and therefore to recognize the structure of violence is not so easy. You must have a very mindful sensitiveness. Only then you will be able to see the form of structure of violence. To face against the violence thing, unethical thing, how an individual should proceed. The ethic has 4 components. Any ethical action must complete the 4 components. The first is the ethics of restraining from negative acts or negative thoughts. And the second is ethics of virtues, to cultivate, accumulate, and develop the virtuous things. And the third component is compassionate mind, because the restraining and accumulation of virtuous, the source is compassionate mind. And the fourth component is the wisdom, the power of discrimination. The compassionate mind, without help of or combination of wisdom, the compassionate mind alone cannot act properly. So any ethical practice shall have to be assemble these four components: restraining from negative act, doing positive act to accumulate the virtuous things, and to doing these two good act, it must not become out of selfish mindset or come out of self-interest, but it is come out of for the interest of the others, from a loving kindness, compassionate mind, the karuna. And the karuna can only be useful and effective when it is accompanied by discriminative mind, a wisdom which could see what is right and what is wrong. So this combination of four components of an ethical person or ethical mind or ethical action, one shall have to go through mapping of one's own emotion, one's own mindset. At this moment, we are by and large unmindful and unaware of our own mental activities, the thought process. How and when some negative emotion comes in our mind and which influences the entire our thought, like anger, jealousy, fear, temptation, attachment, due to a long time habitual or conditioning of our mind by these negative thoughts, it's very difficult to realize now negative thoughts coming. And therefore, when we realize the negative thoughts, usually it is too late. Many wrong actions have been acted due to these negative thoughts. So therefore, we must do practice, be mindful of our own thought. His Holiness make it very easy to understand for the people. He used this metaphor. We are very concerned or conscious to take care of our physical hygiene, but we are not that careful for our mental hygiene. So as much physical hygiene and take care of the physical well-being, we shall also have to similarly take care of the hygiene of the mindset. And by this way, an individual can progress the ethics in one's own life if you are mindful and you are aware of your mental activities, and therefore one should try to practice for noticing each one of the arising emotions, positive, negative, neutral, whatever it may be, and then also aware that to bring the antidote, such as tolerance when you are influenced by anger, and if you are influenced by fear, a kind of confidence. So each negative emotions has its antidote emotions, which can be cultivated or which can be practiced. So by this way, you will have the combination of these four, and then one can hope for ethical behavior. So this is a general statement. Coming to the education, education is a process. Generally believe that a process of learning or process of teaching or process of training. So in this process, there are many stakeholders, many contributors. So the first contributor is in case it is the primary education or pre-school education, the actor, the contributor, most important contributor is the parents or the family members. And then child itself is also, of course, one of the basic contributors. The teacher, the school administration, the society, the environment of the education, environment of the school, the course of syllabi, the textbooks, and the classroom, and then the co-curricular activities such as games and other things. So these are many components and many contributors or many stakeholders. So each one of these stakeholders shall have to be, first of all, a right view, and secondly, a right determination. And as a right view and right determination will bring a right action automatically. To have an ethical education system, the view of parents, family members, the child, the teacher, the school administration, in case one is going to school. In these days, there are many people are experimenting de-schooling. The children are not sent to the organized schools. And I have many friends in Rajasthan. Those people, they are against to sending the children to school. If parents are mature enough, it is possible, and the parents might be able to educate the children much in better way. Of course, it is still in the experiment, and they have also set up, you might have heard about it, multiversity in the contrast of the universities for higher education. When we talk about ethical education, you must be aware of knowing the small experiments going everywhere. Of course, the Gandhi's Bunyadi Shiksha, Bunyadi Talim, he used to call it, the basic education. And Gandhi was very serious and particular in research of this education system. And he was helped by many educationists. One from Sri Lanka, Rabindranath Tagore has sent to the ashram, and Dr. Zakir Hussain and many people involved in that. And Gandhi have said that my last and best offering to my nation is this education system. But unfortunately, no one in the policymakers of the independent India have taken note of that. And the Gandhi's offering was rejected and not accepted. In spite of that, even today, there are about 20 or 25 small schools which are running on the system of Gandhi's thought of Bunyadi Talim. And also Aurobindo Ashram. Aurobindo Ghosh was one of the great philosophers and saints of India. And I very much appreciate his life contribution. His parents are very rich in Calcutta, and they wanted to make him a very pure British Sahib. So when he was born, they employed British English ladies, at that time used to call governors, to take care of child. And in the family, when he is present, they are make a very strict discipline. No one speaks Bengali. Everybody speaks English because the child could be not influenced by local language. At the age of 7, he was sent to London. Until he was 21, he remained in London. And he has not learned his own language and no any kind of tradition or Indian thought or philosophy. He was completely kept away from them. When he comes back, of course, he was a very pure British, but in a very short spell of time, I think many young people might have read his biography. You should read them. Then he learned Sanskrit and he learned many traditional Indian thoughts, and he became a saint and also a freedom fighter. He took refuge in Pondicherry, that was not under British rule at that time, and then ashram was there. So they have set up new education system, and still it is not as good as during his lifetime or the mother's lifetime, but still it is doing good. Then there are about 8 big schools run by Krishnamurti Foundation of India. We have more than 9,000 students are in these schools. So they have quite different kind of education system, which are considered to be free from comparison and competition, and free from the method of reward and punishment, free from any kind of imposing the things, just to try to let awake the inner intelligence of the individuals by itself, just giving some kind of right condition and causes. What I'm talking was, if someone examines the ongoing experiments, then of course the de-schooling, not sending to the schools, and then barefoot colleges. So this kind of new experiments, which are not started by traditional people, so to speak. Some of new experiments are by the students of IIT and went to abroad and take higher education from West and come back and realize how the education system prevailing is so corrupt and so unethical. So therefore they are trying to experiment on these things. So to make the thing short, first of all the stakeholders must have a right view. The right view of the student with whom the whole education process to be evolved or to be conducted. The student must not be considered as a resource material, and which is to be processed according to the objectives set by the future employers, the multinational companies. And today, the biggest unethical thing is the human younger generation is considered to be a resource material, a human resource material, which is to be processed into the industries which are called schools and colleges or universities, and that they are to be processed suitable to sell in the market of so-called employment. The name is little changed. In the ancient time, it used to be called the market of slaves, Ghulam. And now we don't call that Ghulam. Now these are the paid servants which are suitable to the multinational companies to increase their unreasonable profits day by day. And if these products are not easily sold in the market of service, market of employment, then the educational institutions are considered to be inefficient or lesser standard. So therefore, we must consider the student, the child, as a potential. Each individual has a potential of awakening and flowering, and it is not to be processed, but it is to be assisted or to be stimulated to awake their own basic intelligence. And the second thing, the education must not be considered as a set of course which is to be just imposed upon the children, a kind of indoctrination. And then we must not consider the reward and punishment is the best method of imparting the education. And we should also not consider to evaluate them by comparison and by competition. So these are basic shortcomings of the present education. Of course, the India's present education, it has so many shortcomings, that has not been noticed or recognized. We must know how this system has been evolved and developed in this country. In the teacher training courses, we call it B.Ed course, History of Education and the History of Indian Education, they are taught, but they are taught in a very distorted thing. And we do not know the history of Indian education, how it evolved. You all must be aware that Macaulay's speech in the British Parliament on the 2nd February 1834. He spent 2 years in India and went back to London, and he made a statement in the Parliament, and in which he clearly stated, unless we produce an education system through which the Indians can have a kind of deep inferiority complex, that whatever there is inferior and whatever we have is superior, only then we will be able to rule the country. And apart from that, we must create a class of people. By color, they are Indians, but all the mindset, likings and dislikings and way of thinking should be British. And through that class of people, we can rule the country. So this was the beginning of the Macaulay education system. Then just that next year, he was sent and he set a committee called Macaulay Committee. And the proceedings of Macaulay Committee is still available. People can read. And then within 100 years, the complete ancient Indian education system has been destroyed systematically, and the new English education system has been completely set up. That's why Gandhi has made a statement, the Indian ancient education system, like a beautiful tree which has been uprooted and borne out by the British rule. So to establish this statement as true, Dhammapada have written the beautiful tree to research before 1830s what kind of education system prevailed in India and how it has been destroyed. So this is all been researched from the British record in the India House, London, and many other ancient records, and he has very systematically researched and proved. So we should know all these things. Gandhi's basic education system was in no way in the free India. The political independence was achieved very shortly due to largely Gandhi's non-violence effort, and thereafter Gandhi was very soon no more, and then our education system is remain what is set up by the Macaulay. After independence, the first education commission was headed by Dr. Radhakrishnan. Dr. Radhakrishnan was a good philosopher in all Indian philosophical traditions. He has written voluminous works to deal with the different philosophical systems of India. And the Radhakrishnan Commission to Ramamurthy Commission. Ramamurthy Commission was set up by B.P. Singh when he was short-term Prime Minister. And then before the Ramamurthy Commission's report was arrived, the government was fell down. And perhaps that commission report was never been noticed. All these 5 or 6 commissions, they just make a superficial treatment, not a substantive change was able to bring about. Now the forthcoming National Education Policy, which is about 300 pages thick, and it is in the process of discussion and receiving suggestions. I've just glanced from them, and they're also all whitewashings, just superficial treatments, no substantial change, or to bring back to the ancient Indian great education system into the education policies. Therefore, the basic ethical work in the education system we can not elaborate, but in a nutshell, what I can submit to you is that to reviewing the perception of the view of the stakeholders, the child is still a child. Therefore, the view of the parents, how they view the child, how they view the education, how they view the purpose of education, it is just make aware of the reading, writing, and mathematics. In English also we call it 3R. Gandhi used to say it Akshar Jan. To have Akshar Jan or the 3Rs in order to solve the child when it become an adolescent in the market of slaves, to become an employee, paid employee, or to make him a good human being and able to stand his or her own feet and not become a servant of any multinational company, but to become self-supportive, serving the community, and if possible, have a leadership, wisdom leadership to the community. So that is the basic view the parents and teachers must have. Vinoba Bhave have set a very clear objectives for education, and the first objective is to protect and promote the independence of the conscience. The individual's conscience must be remain free and independent, not influenced by external or internal conditionings. And that kind of independent mind should have the capacity to serve the others, serving the people. And in order to serve the others, it is capable of innovation and bring new things into the life system or into the society. And at the same time, a person who could have the sensitivity of equality of all living creature. So this fourfold objective told by Vinoba Bhave is a kind of expression which he put into the words as Gandhi has taught to him. So this kind of view, if someone could have in the mind of teacher, in the mind of parents, and in the mind of the education policymakers, then and only then the ethical education system could be established. So I'm now completing the allotted time frame. So economy is more difficult to bring into ethical framework because economy is always a cause of structural violence. Therefore, we shall have to think economy based on the needs, not an economy based on the greeds. As long as the economy remains based on the greed, there's no way to bring ethics into economy. The social life is also same. A social life in the basis of cooperation, then there can be ethical society, and the social life remain on the basis of comparison and the competition, then there is no hope to bring ethics into the social life. And the policy making is concerned, policymaker must have two qualities: to know and to respect the inspiration of the people and have no self-interest in any way. As long as any political policymaker who has a remotest kind of self-interest, then no policy can be ethical. And also not knowing the basic inspirations of the people, any policy can be imposed on the people, cannot be ethical. So I have overconsumed few minutes from the time schedule because the topic is so vast and not touching the basic grounds of the situation. I was not able to consolidate the thoughts to be presented before you. Even whatever I tried until now is little scattered. So I hope you will be able to understand the scattered statements to put into relevant framework and to use in your query. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for your enlightening and most precious word, Rinpoche. Rinpoche, based on today's talk, we have some questions by our audience, out of which I would like to bring few pressing and important questions forward. First question we have: what kind of old Ladakhi tradition you think to revive in their modernity challenging society for the healthy mental state?
This question is a very relevant question, yet difficult to answer. The tradition exists in Ladakh is difficult to identify. we have to differentiate long time perpetuated systems or customs or habits and the real tradition. Long term perpetuated systems and way of life may not belonging to necessarily what we call as tradition. I think I have mentioned before also somewhere, we have to differentiate the tradition and the perpetuated custom or system. Tradition means originated from an authentic source. If something is a Buddhist tradition, then that tradition must be coming from Buddha himself. And similarly, any other tradition, an authentic source originated and is coming down all the time through unbroken lineage. One teacher to student, that to another student, from Buddha to one's own teacher, if he is a Buddhist tradition, that unbroken lineage coming down. And it says, practiced and commented by the scholars and by the siddhas, and verifiable logic by logic and reasoning. So if there's three components completed, then it can be considered as a tradition. Otherwise, there are many old systems which are not originated from the authentic source and not verifiable by logic and reasoning, that need not to be protected or that need not to be preserved. It can go away with time. But real tradition, unless and until it is exist, to reviving is quite difficult. Once it is finished, disappeared, then you cannot revive it, because reviving cannot have the unbroken lineage. So therefore, these days people talk about revival of the things, but things reviving is any ordinary knowledge. Of course, once lost, this can be revived, but in tradition cannot be revived. If the traditions exist, then itself is a powerful remedy to all kind of modern challenges. If your mind is in the traditional mindset, you cannot be easily influenced by the modernity or modern challenge. So what I suggest to this questioner is that we shall very carefully try to identify what kind of traditions are still available in this part of the land, and whatever is available that need to be preserved and protected and promoted, and that will give you silently the remedy to all kind of modern challenges. So this need to be a long-term experiment, and if someone do this experiment, I think we will be able to demonstrate how tradition is antidote to all challenges of modernity. Otherwise, the so-called traditions are not real traditions. They are polluted and they are distorted in many ways. I may share with you one of my experiences. One of my friends was trying to um, preserve and protect traditional education system, and we have a series of conferences inviting the traditional educational institutions, so-called traditional educational institutions are run by philosophical traditions or religious traditions. And when we discuss with them, the majority of them are very much promoter of modernity. And what they have told us that how their tradition is suitable for the modernity. And they are very much modernized themselves, so that by modernization of their own tradition, now their tradition is compatible, go with the postmodern civilization. So this mindset is very much prevailed in a large section of the so-called traditional society. And if the modernity is to be achieved by modifying the tradition to make it compatible and suitable with the modernity, then there's no tradition survive. And then, as I mentioned, once tradition is disappeared, it is quite difficult to restore, to revive. A text or a community can be restored, revived, but a tradition which is a parampara coming through an authentic source to the present day, when it is the lineage is broken, then revival is, I may not say impossible, but is very, very difficult. Now, what I would like to share is that a person who is born and brought up in a society where a rich tradition is available, but the person himself or herself is being educated into the modern education system, then how to make a combination of this traditional society and a modern educated person. The modern education gives you a kind of critical mind, analytical mind. If we are able to utilize this appropriately, this is one of the assets you modern educated people have. Through that analytical mind should examine the tradition, not from a sense of contamination, but just a real inquisitiveness, and examine the tradition. And then when you find the real tradition which exists still today, then you will able to understand if your mind is free enough, your mind is impartial enough, then you will understand the value of the tradition. the seeing the value of tradition, that is enough. When you see, when you realize the value of the tradition, then you are almost in it. And then you can use that. It will give you strength. It will give you the kind of self-competence, and thereby you will able to encounter with the challenges of modernity.
Thank you, Rinpoche. And now next question is from Rigzin Wangmo. Her question is, how do we balance ancient wisdom with modern technology?
Ancient wisdom?
Ancient wisdom with modern technology.
I'm so slow to understand. How do we balance? I don't know. Ancient wisdom does not have any weight. It is free from the gravity, and it can flow all over the sky. And I have no suggestion how it can be balanced with the modern technology. Modern technology is come out of ordinary mind. Ordinary mind means all this scientific way of finding, they never look to the perfection of mind or development of mind. Whatever a human individual naturally have a mindset, that remains there. And what they do is the instruments are improved, and the experiment technologies are improved, thereby something which are not aware before are finding. And the ancient wisdom does not depend on outer instruments. They always increase the quality of mind and the clarity of mind. I can make just a small example. In the water, every water, there are so many invisible small insects, and that can be seen by ordinary eye only through magnifying glasses. And through the magnifying glasses and from the instrument, you can see the small insects. And in the ancient time, there was no magnifying glass. The power of eyesight is increased. The Arahantas or the Aryas, they have the superpower of eyesight. They can see the small insects. During Buddha's time, Buddha had told, you should not drink water which is existence of living creatures. Then many Arahantas could not drink water because they see from their eye so many small insects are there. The Buddha said, no, it is not the way. You must see the things through ordinary eye. So therefore, the ancient wisdom is not be compared with the modern technology, and also to make balance is, I could not understand what exactly the question means. Making balance is, the question might be come out of a mindset, the comparison between ancient wisdom and modern technology. If it is from the viewpoint of comparison, then I would say these are separate realm, entirely separate dimension, which cannot be compared and which cannot be make a balance. I don't know. This is my idea.
Okay, next question is from Rinchen Wangchuk. His question is, as meat, dairy, and egg industries are the most powerful industries, and it's not an industry but atrocity, can we fulfill the needs of people without this cruelty towards animals?
Please teach me. Huh? Meat, dairy. This question is very relevant and compassionate question, and its answer is also inbuilt within the question. In the modernity, the increase of quantity and the increase of speed of production and the increase of selling it into the market are considered to be inseparable part of the modern economy. Human beings has a negative desire and positive desire, which can be exploited very easily. The basic setback in the age of industrialization, why the modern challenges are come to in existence, is the production of commodity much more than the real need of the people. Then excessive production, that's why Gandhi's opposition to machine is, the machine is unnecessary, because the human hand is enough to produce, to meet the needs of the people. It's unfortunate that these days the educated people do not read Gandhi. Anyone reads Gandhi's literature, the majority of questions can be, the answers can be found from his wisdom. When the people are able to produce more than the need of the people by industrialization, by technology, praudyogic systems, how to use them. It cannot be used, it can be only consumed. The most easiest way is exploit the human greed. Human greed is very easy to exploit it. It can be exploited through comparison and competition and advertisement and indoctrination, which are all the day, in and day out. It may be in the newspapers, it may be in the television, it may be in the radio, and wherever you go, on the walls are full of advertisement. That's only to increase the human greed. And unless we come back to the base of the, I think I mentioned, unless we build a system of economy based on needs, then there would be no problem, no challenges. The Mother Earth, the nature, is capable of satisfying each living being's need. This is Gandhi's again word. Gandhi says the Mother Earth is capable of satisfying all living beings on it for their needs, but it cannot satisfy a single individual's greed. The whole planet is not capable of satisfying the single individual's greed. So we shall have to build an economy which is based on the needs, not on the greed. And I also recommend to look into the words of the Schumacher. He wrote The Small is Beautiful, and in which one chapter is the Buddhist economy. And any person who claim to be a Buddhist should know the Buddhist economy also. Thereby, substitute or alternative economic system is possible, and it is available. The meat, the eggs are not necessary for human body. Human body is basically vegetarian kind of body system. And I think a number of books have been written, the biological setup of the human body, which is only for vegetarian foods. The food grains and other vegetables and fruits which are suitable for the human teeth and the human intestines, all these have been examined. They are not meat eater. And meat eating is unnatural for the human body. Therefore, these days in the West, the vegetarians are increasing, vegetarianism and vegetarian people are increasing, not for the reason of the no violence or compassion for the animals, only for reason of the health. So they are now adopting vegetarianism. They're realizing that human body is more suitable for vegetarianism. So without cruelty towards animals, we can survive very well, and we can have a very healthy body. But the only thing is the greed of these industry owners, and these industry owners need a quick profit and quick money, and for that they can exploit the human greed, and is doing so. So we should slowly promote the awareness how vegetarianism is suitable for the human body, and how the cruelty is being done to the animals by these industries. I think most of the meat eaters or egg eaters may not be aware how much cruelty is being actually done in these industries. And I appreciate you for having feeling about the animals, and we should try to reduce the cruelty to the animals.
Okay, the next question is, having had so many challenges of modern life, from decline in ethics to climate change, mental health issues, and endless more, which one do you think is the first priority and why?
Consider which. I think all the challenges are a kind of emergency nature, and we cannot prioritize them. This should be meet first, and this can be wait for this subsequent. But basically speaking, the the decline of ethic is the cause of all other challenges. So, if we need to make a prioritization, then the restoration of ethical mindset is most important. Because if once we are able to create the ethical mind in the majority of the people, the rest of the challenges automatically can be met, and it will because once you have an ethical mind, your lifestyle will be automatically changed. When your lifestyle is become a no-violence one, then you are no more contributor to global warming, you are no more contributor to environment degradation, you are no more contributing to other kind of violence. So once your ethical mind is restored, you withdrawn from all the other challenges, and once you withdrawn and the other people are withdrawn, then of course there will be a visible transformation change can be seen in the scenario.
Okay, our next question is from Tundup Noro from London School. His question is, in this modern world, which is more important, ethics or religion? And his next question is, what is universal ethics?
Which is more important? Religion is a very pervasive word, and which is difficult to define. Ethic is a more specific word, and the ethics need not depend on a religious tradition. Religious traditions do teach ethics, but there are secular ethics as well. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama is now teaching the secular ethics in the worldwide. Now we have no time this morning, so I was not able to talk about secular ethics. This question is good. Ethic is necessary for both the people who are believers or non-believers. In the English world, the religious followers are being termed as believers, and they who are not subscribed to any religion, that's called non-believer. Non-believers also need an ethics. So therefore, the secular ethic is a kind of universal ethic. Your second question. Universal ethic means, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are different concepts of ethics, some of them universal and some of them particular conditions or times or group. So universal ethics, as I mentioned, the ethic which is based on free from violence. Because all living beings are equal. They are equal into three levels. So firstly, each sentient being like happiness, do not like unhappiness. So this is equal to everyone. And secondly, the right to pursue happiness and right to avoid unhappiness is also equal to everyone. And thirdly, the potential to achieve happiness and to avoid unhappiness, each one has the same potential. So therefore, all living creatures are equal in this. So therefore, the non-violence principle ethic is universal, not harming to any other, because oneself is not liking to harmed by others. So the same is the others also. The free from violence, restraining from violence is the first step of the ethics, and that is the universal, whether someone is a believer or someone is non-believer. And we may not make any differentiation or comparison which is more important or which is less important, because at present the world is almost void of religion. Religions are composed of three things: the religiousness, religiosity, and religionism. If you examine all the different religious traditions, the religiousness is no more exist. That is why now we are using the term religious intolerance. This is a contradictory expression, self-contradictory expression. If someone is religious-minded, he or she can never be intolerant. If someone is intolerant, that is the biggest evidence the person is not religious-minded. So there is no such thing which can be called a religious intolerance. So in the void of religion, among the Buddhists also we can talk ourselves. If we really examine how many people do have the real kind of Sharangami, Chamdo, and without having a Chamdo, we cannot claim ourselves as a Buddhist. Just born in a Buddhist family does not make one person as a Buddhist. So therefore the religiousness is disappeared, religionism little bit, and what exists is the institutions and the name, the religionism that is we are talking about and we are fighting on which. So in this sense, I would say the religionism is much less important than the secular ethics.
Okay, now we have our last question. The question goes, as we all know that our contemporary education system is very unhealthy, stressful and competitive in a negative way, and deschooling in a place like Ladakh seems quite difficult. So in such a case, what would be the other options? Contemporary education system is very unhealthy, stressful, and competitive in a negative way, and deschooling in a place like Ladakh seems quite difficult. In such case, what would be other options?
I don't have any other option ready to present before you. If you think the present system is not satisfactory, then you shall have to create alternative things by yourself. One question I was not able to address this morning, that was how can an individual contribute in bringing about a change? So this can be combined with this question, what are the alternatives? Apparently, there's no alternative. Because of that, many people begin to de-schooling, not sending children to the school. But this kind of work can only be done by limited parents. All the parents are not in that position. The limited parents who are competent to give a shiksha to their own children at home, then they can discard the school and their family or their home become alternative school. But it is not applicable to every parent. The farmers and the workers and the employees and majority of the parents are not have the capacity to do such thing. So is there any alternative good schooling system? In my view, there's not much. I don't say there's none. Even there's few, everybody cannot have the opportunity. They are all limited in seats and numbers. Everybody has limited resources. So good schools may not accommodate all the children. So in such thing, the people should think how we can offer alternative opportunities. There are two ways to bring substantive transformation in the existing schools: by retraining the teachers, by changing the mindset of the owners and the parents, and by improving the course and the method of teaching, so that the existing schools may become better, and also to set up alternative schools in which much better education system can be begin. So what I'm going to conclude is, any kind of change you wish to bring about and what you can contribute in that change is you become yourself the change. This is again Gandhi's world. If you would like to see any change in the society, the first and foremost necessary is you yourself become that change. And you disagree the present system and you have an alternative idea, you should begin with your children, and you should begin with your community, and you should begin with a small way, whatever you can. And by that way, many alternatives can make available for the community. Thank you.